kind of finish this portion up, we're going to move on to orthographic projections. Because Fessner's really chatty, probably not as in-depth as I'd like today, but we'll get to it. So I'm going to start a new one of these guys. It is Imperial, so I need to make sure I'm in Imperial. You could start this in your template if you prefer.
So it should just say inches?
Yep, inches. Yep. And like I said, if you want to open it in your template, that's great too. So I'm going to do that just so we have all the stuff we need. So I'm in my template here. You can see layers are great. This one, this is not, I don't think, a lot new, other than the polygon tool, which is pretty cool, I guess. It doesn't come up a lot, but when it does, it's kind of useful. And I wanted to specifically show you polygon because it behaves kind of strangely. The first part of this thing, I think, is pretty simple to do. It's a whole bunch of center lines and offsets. So I started this as just a series of center lines and a center circle. So I'm going to do the center circle here. They tell you this guy is a diameter of 4. See that? It's pointed out to that center circle. So I'm going to grab my diameter. I'm going to go 4. And then I'm going to get something like that. Make sure that this goes onto your center layer, of course, because it's a center circle.
What's the size again?
Diameter 4. And then from there, you know, you can do a couple of different ways. I don't really care which way you do it. But at the intersection of this guy, I have some circle sets. It tells me the diameter of the inside one is 0.5, the diameter of the outside one is 1.0. Okay, so here I'm going to do a 0.5. And then a 1.0. So I get something that looks like that. And this is where the part about this polygon tool is kind of effective. So polygon tool works like this. It is always associated to a circle. Okay, so I'm going to put in a diameter circle, and that is not anywhere on here, but I want to show you this. You can watch it, and then I'll do it again for you if you want. But I'm going to put in this diameter 1. So like I said, if you want to just watch this part. So when you do polygon, it's up under rectangle. It's this guy right here. So you have to hit the little drop down next to rectangle, and you're going to get polygon. And at first it's going to open, and you're going to notice it's asking both the dynamic input and on the command line, it's asking you for the number of sides. So this one happens to be 6, right? So I'm going to go 6, enter. Then it says, choose the center of the polygon. So because it's associated to a circle, I'm going to click the center point of the circle. So the last part of this is the huge difference about this. And these are things that you may remember from geometry class, probably not. But there are 2 types of circles related to polygons. Polygons that fit inside of circles and polygons that use the circle as a reference. So the inside ones are inscribed. It's easy to remember because the whole circle fits inside, inscribed, and circumscribed. And that guy is going to fit outside. It uses the circle as a boundary. Okay, so inscribed is going to fit inside. Circumscribed is going to be outside.
What's the circle?
Why the difference that you need is because they're 2 entirely different sizes. So watch this. If I do an inscribed circle, you're gonna notice that all of these guys, all of these points of the hexagon are contained inside of the diameter 1 circle, okay? So when I dimension this, you're gonna notice if I go from here to here, that guy is too small, right? Because it's inscribed. Versus, if I go circumscribed, now I'm using the outside of this circle, and when I click it down, as I dimension this guy, it's going to be 1 inch. That's a huge difference, right? You're talking 0.18 or whatever it is, 1.12, whatever I'm saying there. So, I mean, it's a pretty big difference there. So you kind of got to make sure you're using the right one. So again, if I'm using this tool, I'm going to lay down the circle for reference because that's an easy way to do it. Could you do it another way? Yeah, harder, I think, a lot. But I'm going to use the circle and then get rid of the circle. That's the way I do it. So I'm going to use polygon, right? So I put down my diameter 1 circle. I'm going to use polygon 6, enter for the sides. It's going to ask me for the center, and then I'm going to do circumscribe to make sure it sits on the outside of that circle. So from here, you can kind of see, that's trippy for 9:30, can't do that. So this guy, I'm going to use the quadrant snaps in order to set that thing the way I want it. Okay, so I'm just, now that I have it attached, I'm going to click right there. Did I lose anybody? Yeah.
We can do only line. It is 1, so half it is 0.5. And according to the line, we can do the shape without the same.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, you could draw a line and attach it.
Yeah,
Yep,
I don't draw
absolutely.
a cycle, I do only perpendicular line.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, you could do it that way. So when you do that, it probably doesn't matter which one you pick for inscribed, circumscribed,
No, it should be,
right? Because you're using the
Outside.
line to attach.
it should be outside.
But if you're using the line as a reference, as a
Yeah.
snap reference, it's always going to go to that. So, yeah, I mean, your way may be a little easier, obviously, but then you wouldn't probably know what to do with circumscribed or inscribed. So, I'm going to do it this way. So, did I lose anybody on that? Want me to repeat it? Okay.
Mine looks like yours, so it's all right.
So this guy I don't need anymore. That was, like I said, just for a reference. So I'm going to get rid of that. The important part to know about these is these guys are blocks, right? So remember we talked about anytime you put in a title block, anytime you array, anytime you mirror, anytime you put in a dimension, they're all going to be blocks and they're all going to retain information. This one has retained that this is a group of lines. I think that's pretty obvious. But it's also a group of lines that makes up a specific shape. So if I want to do anything to this, I would have to explode it, right? And that's going to be the same for every block. So just keep that in mind. Anytime you make one of these guys, that's a kind of a big deal. So from here, I see this dude right here, this 0.2 typical. And I know that I can offset that. Again, there's another way to do it. If you wanted to put in one that was bigger, you could certainly do that. I'm going to use offset, and I'm going to offset 0.2 because it tells me that gap is 0.2. And from here, it's pretty easy. I'm just going to click that guy and click to the outside, not the inside, but the outside. Okay. So again, offset 0.2 because they told me it's 0.2. I'm going to click my polygon and I'm going to go to the outside, 0.2. I'm going to do that same thing for this center line because they tell me that this guy is also 0.2. Okay? So how do I know that? Because it says 0.2 TYP, typical, which means everywhere I see that gap, it's going to be 0.2. Not just the space here, space everywhere. So here where I see that gap, here where I see that gap, here where I see that gap, everywhere, because it says TYP, it's going to be 0.2. It's only labeled in one spot, but it's applicable for the whole drawing. So again, I'm just gonna reference this guy, 0.2. Sorry, I'm gonna reference this guy at 0.1 because I need to go above the midline and below the midline. So I should get something that looks like that, I hope. And from here, it's a lot of trimming, of course. So I'm going to trim these guys. So it looks something like that. I'm also going to trim these guys just to make sure that they are outside there. And these guys. So if you notice here, it still has that chunk of circle. So I need to leave that chunk of circle here. Okay, so I can't trim that part, but I should at this point be in, pretty decent shape here. So I'm going to get rid of this guy just for a minute here. And I'm going to, well, not true. I'm going to fillet this first. So they tell me that all the fillets are a radius of 0.2. So I'm going to do something that looks like that. And then something that looks like that. And so now I'm going to array this guy. So this guy I'm going to explode. And the reason I'm going to explode it is because it is a polygon, right? It's all associated as a block. And I don't want to make, what do I got? 6 polygons. I just want one. So I'm going to click on this dude, and you can see it all kind of highlight together. And I'm just going to explode that so I can get these lines separate. That's all I'm really looking for.
So what happens if you exploded it beforehand?
If I didn't explode it, if I did, if you did, that's okay. You could explode it earlier. I just didn't. So I'm going to array this guy, polar array, and now I wish I deleted that circle. But it's going to look kind of something like that. And again, I am going to explode this now, as opposed to finishing the array and opening it back up. So while I have it selected, I'm just going to go home and explode that dude. And that's going to allow me to have all these pieces separate so that I can go back and trim them. So when I'm going to go in here and get rid of all these little guys. Minutes of your life are ticking away while I trim. So it's going to look something like that. Now, it's essentially just a whole bunch of offsets and fillets from here. So I'm not going to waste your time with all of them, but I'm going to do something that looks like this. Then I'm going to offset these guys above and below. Something like that. And I'm going to trim these. Not to like fast pace this, but most people can handle the trimming part. Okay, something like that. And then I'm going to fillet them. And I'm going to fillet these guys.
For some reason, whenever I do like a decimal, like I put in a decimal, it's changing into a fraction.
You probably have a fractional setting on your template. So once I have this guy, I'm going to array that again around the center. So I get something that looks like that guy. And, you know, at that point, you can explode that too, if you'd like. Kind of just edit it. And from there, it's some center lines, so, you know, like,
No, no, this is a stupid question. Remember how you did the circle, and then you did that? Could you do basically the same thing on a larger scale? Hypothetically. Yeah, but would they take more time?
yeah, 6 of one, half a dozen of that. Like if you're saying if I did another polygon,
Yeah,
Yeah. good. You know, need 2 more, right? So one for the inside, one for the outside, or you could just keep offsetting it. You know, that this one right here, you know, this one. So then you have to offset the next one, 0.2. So